I'm Jesus, and you're watching Knogginator, aka the best Forza YouTuber you've ever watched. Subscribe to Knogginator. Don't let me down, fam.
How's it going, guys? It's Knogginator, and I've had a theory. What is up with Forza's PI system? There's a whole lot of things that's wrong about this system, and a whole lot of things I kind of want to debunk. And I'm first going to start off with the Autoshow prices. As you can see, I'm going through here and the Autoshow prices for all 7 classes. And D class, the average Autoshow price is 50,000 credits. Yet you can buy a car for 20,000 credits and 10 million. So there's not a big reasoning for D class. It is so widespread. Now we look at C class. It's almost the same exact thing. You can buy a car from 25,000 credits to 10 million. So why is it C class? The average auto show price is also 70,000. So once again, it's not a whole lot higher, but a little bit higher. Now we look at B class. The average price in B class is 80,000 credits. But once again, it has the same exact range as C class, 25,000 to 10 million. So why are these lower classes so expensive and so widespread? And that's my question, and I don't know. We'll have to figure that out, and you'll see later on in the video. Now we look at A class. The average price in A class is 110,000 credits, yet once again, you guessed it, we can buy a car for 10 million in this class. So the interesting part here is we can see the lower 4 classes are the most expensive in terms of the highest vehicle, and that's an issue. Now we look at S1. The average price in S1 is 160,000 credits, yet we can buy a car from 60,000 to 2 million. So why is S1 cheaper than A class? Now we look at S2, and there is a huge difference. 1.2 million is the average price of an S2 vehicle, yet we can buy a car from 340,000 to 4.5 million. So I want to bring up a chart here in just a second, a chart that I made about every single price, and I can kind of compare, because what we'll see is a huge difference in the price of cars, even though it's not relative, because basically D through A class has a higher maximum at 10 million compared to S1 and S2 with 10, 2, and 4 million. We could see here the difference between D class and C class is linear. It makes sense. Then we look at the difference between C and B. It's about the same. B to A is about the same. A to S1 is a little bit more of a difference. But then we look at S1 to S2. X class is not available to buy in the auto show. But we look at this, and it makes you think, there's such a big difference between S1 and S2. So now we look at the auction prices. Now, auction's a little bit different. It's usually cheaper because people sell it for less. And the average price in D class, as we can see on the auction here, is going to be just 20K. Yet you can buy cars for extremely cheap, but the average is 20K. Now we look at C class. The average price for a C class car is going to be 30,000. Not a whole lot more expensive than D class. But you'll see later on, is it worth, when we look at the performance test, is it worth it? Now we have B class. 50,000 is the average price. That's it, just 50,000. Like I said, later on in the video, we're going to test the performances of these cars, and we're going to compare them to see if it's worth it. Sometimes B class will be higher than A class, sometimes D will be higher than C. And now we look at A class. 80,000 credits is the average price, but there are a lot of cars that go on here for higher. But the thing about A through D, they can all be bought for just 15K. As you see that Vauxhall there for 14K. So the auction house basically has no difference between A and D class, yet there is a huge performance difference. So we'll figure that out later on the video too. Now we look at S1, and the average S1 class car is 180,000. A lot of these cars are Forza editions. So That's a huge jump, 100K between A class and S1. Now we look at S2. Now the average S2 class car is 300,000, but some cars can go up to 6 million. Some, as we saw that, to 11, but some can get into the millions, 9 million there, but the average is 300K. So there's not a huge difference between S1 and S2 in the auction, but in the auto show, it's a huge difference. In an X class, 1.8 million is the highest, but we can buy cars for just 187K, as we saw there. So X class is cheaper than S1. That doesn't make sense. Now we look at the graph here again that I made, and you can see, compared to the auto show graph, A to S1 took a bigger leap, and S1 to S2 took a bigger leap. And then we see yet again the difference between S2 and X class. So the highest class in this game is a huge boost. So basically for the auto show and the auction house, it all stays linear until the very last one, and then there's a huge jump. Now we can look at what it is to upgrade each car. And so we're going to start off with a D class car and bring it up. So to upgrade it to the top of C class, as you see here, it is going to be about 5,800 credits. That's not a whole lot to get from D to C. Remember, we're going to try to stay on that same linear path, the same linear path that it was in the auction and the auto show. And now we're going to bring this to the top of B class. And we can do this by doing some bulk upgrades. But when we get to the top of B class, instead of it costing 5,800, it's going to cost 47,500. So there is a huge jump between C class to B class. And when we look in the auto show and we look in the auction, there's not a huge jump in between C through S1. It's all about the same. But it's not when you upgrade your car. Now we're going to bring it from B class to the top of A class, and it's 75,700. So now it's getting a little bit linear. You know, we jumped about 40K from C to B. Now we jump about 30K from B to A. But now we're going to bring it to S1. And here's what's very interesting. In the auction house and the auto show, A to S1 goes up by more than all the other ones before. But in this situation, it goes up less than C to B, and it's 84,500. So that's only 9,000 different than A class. So now we go to building it to the top of S1 at 84,500, and now we have to build it to S2. So in the auto show, we saw the huge difference between S1 and S2 went up by over 1 million. In the auction house, we saw S1 to S2 go up by over 100,000, right? And now, once we build this thing all the way to the top, we're gonna have to bring in the Ferrari FXXK. But when we reach the top of S2 in total, it's gonna end up costing us 206,000 credits. So we see a big jump between S1 and S2, just like we saw in the auto show, but we didn't see it in the auction house. So all three different types of money and way that the game is working, every type has a different way of the PI. You know, its PI is taking different jumps at different situations, and a lot of that doesn't make sense, but it's what's happening in the game. And now we're gonna go ahead and bring us up from S2 to X class. As we can see here, we've reached the top of S2, pretty much 997. We add the 78K on from before, and that's where we got the 206,000 from. But now we're gonna have to build it to the top of X class, the highest we can go, and it's gonna be 219,000. So there's not a big jump between S2 and X class, but there's a huge jump in the auction house from S2 to X class. So is it worth it to just buy a car from S2 in the auction house than it is to then upgrade it to X class? And you can buy an S1 car in the auto show and upgrade it to X class, and it'll be cheaper. So every single PI group, every single class is different. Now this is the interesting part, our graph here. This graph is all over the place. It is not linear like the other two graphs. You can see D to C is very low. There's not a huge difference in price. Yet C to B is a pretty big difference to price, and we didn't see that in the auto show or the auction house. B to A is linear to C and B, but a little bit less, and it's right in the middle between D and C. And A to S1 is about as linear as D to C. And we could see on this, there's a big difference between D and S1, and there wasn't a big difference before. Now let's talk about the types of cars found in each class. So each class has its own type of cars. And in D class, we usually find classics, retros, and vans. So the reason I'm talking about the types of cars is because if it's priced differently, what kind of different cars are in here? We look at C class and it's retro, classics, vans, just like D class, yet we have some off-road cars. So it costs a little bit more, but it's basically the same exact cars. Now we look at B class and we get introduced to some new vehicles. We get hot hatches and retro sports cars. B class is kind of different in everything. It was different in the auto show, different in the auction and the upgrades, and it has different car groups. So B class is one of the interesting car classes in Forza. Let's now move to A class. We get the super saloons and the super sports cars and modern sports cars. So a lot of it is sports cars, and this is the most popular class because of it. It's not expensive. A class kind of stays the same in every little metric that we've looked at so far. You know, it's not too expensive. We look at S1 and it's got hypercars, GT cars, rally monsters, and track toys. It's got pretty much everything. It's a huge variety. But do you remember earlier in the video how S2 costed way more than S1 in the auction house? But what kind of cars are different? In S2, we get hypercars and track toys. We get hypercars and track toys in S1. These hypercars and track toys are the same exact thing. They're just more expensive. So is it really worth the difference in the auto show? Why does it cost so much more in the auto show? And it mimics that in the auction house. So every PI has a different role in every single thing, which doesn't really make sense. Now let's look at drag times per class. So the cars that I used in D class, I used a BMW 2002 Turbo. In C class, I used a Nissan Silvia Case. In B class, I used the Audi RS3 Sportback. A class, the BMW M4 Coupe. S1, the Pagani Huayra. S2, the Lamborghini Centenario. And X, the McLaren 720S. So this is going to be my drag race for D class here in the BMW Turbo. Now, I just did one race. Not everything is going to be perfect. I am human. That was a 15.28 for D class. Now, here's what's interesting. Remember, there's not a huge difference between D and C in price, but it does cost more. Yet, look at the interesting thing here. This time is going to be a 15.48. It was slower than D class. Now, B class, which is this car, the Audi, has been consistent throughout everything. You know, it's never been too expensive or too cheap. It's always been about the same. And this car got a 13.38 on the drag strip. So it's quicker, 2 seconds quicker. Now we look at the A class. We have our other BMW. A class, once again, was the wide variety. It cost more than the B, C, and D in pretty much every form. But is it really that much quicker? And when we compare to it, it's a 12.34. It's only 1 second quicker. Now we get to S1. In the auto show, there's a difference between A and S1 in price. And upgrades, there's not a huge difference. So is it really that much quicker? And when we look at it, no. 11.01, it's just, once again, a second quicker. Now in the auto show, as we saw previously, it is very expensive to get an S2 car, and the upgrades is expensive to get an S2. So how much quicker is it exactly? Well, it's 2 seconds quicker with a flat 9. And then we finally have X class here. In our McLaren, right? X class was extremely expensive in the auto show, but it didn't cost that much more to upgrade. So how much quicker is it? Well, 8.37, it is just 0.6 quicker. Here's our quarter-mile drag chart. As you can see, C class to S2 is basically all linear. There's a little bit of a difference, but in this situation, C class is quicker than D class. Now, maybe that's because that's the type of car it is, but if it's a PI system that is ranked on how quick a car is, then how come the C class car is quicker? As you can see though, we lose about 1 second to 2 seconds in every class, but there's not a big difference between S2 and X. It looks just like our upgrade chart from S1 on. So does upgrading via PI equal the drag time? I'm not sure. It doesn't mimic price though, I can tell you that. And that's the interesting thing about the system. If it's not going to mimic price, does it mimic performance? If it does, then why is C class quicker than D? Now we look at the speed trap. Once again, we're using the same cars. I'll be doing a 0.6 mile speed trap here, flat out for each car. So here we go. This is our D class car right before we get to the speed trap. And as we get to it, it is going to be 116 miles an hour. That's not bad. It's not too slow. So the C class car was slower in the drag, but is it faster in the speed trap? If so, how much faster? And what we end up getting here is that it is 131 miles an hour. So the interesting thing about that is that the drag time was slower, but you remember the prices, they weren't that big of a difference, but it made 15 miles an hour more. Now, C to B class was pretty much the same and everything. It wasn't too expensive from one class to another. So I would expect the speed to be a little bit close, and in fact it is 136 miles an hour, just a 5 mile per hour increase. Now we look at our A class car, and in upgrades, it's a little more expensive to get to A class. In the auto show, it's a little more expensive. So is it really that much of a difference between B class to A class? I wouldn't expect it to be. But as you can see, it is in fact a big difference, 161 miles an hour compared to 136 before. So even though the price is not that much different between the two classes, the performance is, which is interesting. Now we have S1 here in our Pagani Huayra, and we get a total of 186 miles an hour. So it is once again a big difference. And as we previously stated before, S2, which is this car here, our Lamborghini Centenario, S2 was the biggest cost in the auto show. It was a big cost to upgrade, so it better be a huge performance, and it's really not. I mean, it is, but not. 209 miles an hour compared to 186. In X class was cheaper to upgrade, as we've seen before, but it costs a lot in the auction house. So how much different is the top speed? Well, in fact, it is pretty different from 209 to 227. So let's go ahead and bring up that chart. As you can see, things are a lot more linear here. Things make a lot more sense, but we kind of see a difference between D and B. The difference between D and C is greater than C and B, which is an interesting little difference we see here. It's only 20 miles an hour, but then we look from B class to X class, it's linear. It's almost exactly the same from B class to S2 and the amount that you gain per class. So yeah, now let's go on to lap time per car. Now, this was a quick race, basically. I did 1 lap, and I'm speeding the video up by ×2, so we can kind of get through this a lot quicker. So we're going to start off with our D class car here. So everything's kind of been in line so far. So is the racing going to be in line as well? And as we get done with our first race in the D class, our lap time is going to be a 1:12.11. So now we need to see a difference between D and C. Once again, the prices are not that different between D and C. So is it going to be that much different in the race? And as we can see here, as we get towards the end, the difference is 3 seconds. We finish with a 1:09. Now we look at our B class car. Here's what's different between this car. Now, there wasn't a huge difference in price, there wasn't a huge difference in upgrade, and there wasn't a huge difference in speed. But we're actually 9 seconds quicker with the B class car. Now let's go on to the A class car. Once again, the most consistent, doesn't cost too much. Everything stays linear, and in fact, it stays linear. Once again, we lose 2 seconds, 58 seconds. Now we have S1. Remember, S1 was expensive, but not as expensive, so we would expect not a huge drop-off. But, once again, Forza's PI system does not make any sense. We get a 52 seconds, which is 6 seconds less. Finally, or second to finally, we have S2. S2 was very expensive, as we remember. So, is it a big difference in time? It was. We lost 7 seconds. Finally, X-Class, not a huge difference in price. Is it a huge difference in performance? As we get to the end here, we can see, no, it was not. Only 1 second difference. Here's our lap time chart. As you can see, a big difference between C-Class and B-Class, yet the money was not. B-Class to A is about the same as D-Class to C. A-Class to S1 was a big difference, but about the same as S1 to S2. Yet S1 to S2 cost over $1 million, compared to A to S1 that only cost $100,000, and we get the same performance out of it. And just like the upgrades and not the price, S2 is linear with X in that fashion. So basically, it doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense at all in the PI. Everything is different. Nothing lines up. And that's kind of how I've gone through this. If you guys have any questions, any comments, please comment below. Share this. A lot of people need to see this, because this system doesn't make any sense at all. I hope you guys understood this video. Only high IQ people can. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.